Welcome to episode number 136 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. We're recording live on YouTube on March 27, 2016. Our topics today are Microsoft's racist chatbot, NPR hiding their podcasts, Cruz doesn't do rats, meaningless media polls, Google live streaming in Google's live streaming app, Esther the Wonder Pig, an all-emoji travel app, and a lot more in between. We always start off with the worst story of the week, and B.L. kicks it off for us every week. What's the worst story, B.L.?
Well, it would have to be Microsoft's chat box, which suddenly turned racist, and they had a whole lot of fanfare about it. And its name was Tay, and they put it on Twitter, and Tay learned from what people tweeted at it, and it could be asked to repeat phrases. Well, unfortunately, within 24 hours, it had become viciously racist. And guess who caused that? That's the really weird part. 4chan and 8chan. And as soon as they realized that they could get Tay to tweet about Hitler, racism, and the evils of feminism, 8chans joined in, and Wednesday evening they had a thread titled Teaching the, I'm not going to say it, the N-bot about the Jews, and the opening post said, in case you didn't hear, Microsoft released an AI on Twitter that you can interact with. Keep in mind that it does learn things based on what you say and how you interact with it. And so immediately it had love for Hitler, and it was harassing people. And this went on and on. And it went from humans are super cool to full Nazi in under 24 hours. It makes you concerned about the future of AI. But what I'm really concerned about is, where the hell was Microsoft? How could they not be watching? How could they not be paying attention? So they did pull it, but what goes online stays online. It's still there.
Wow, that's absolutely stunning. And I mean the fact that they hadn't been paying attention, didn't shut it down immediately, is pretty stunning in and of itself. But also, so I mean, the best AI is the AI that learns from its own experiences, right? So we saw that from AlphaGo and Google last week and the week before. This is no different. But oh my God, you can racism is learned.
Well, that does prove it, doesn't it? But how vile. And, just there's no excuse for Microsoft, with all of the different ways that there are for brands to monitor what's being said about them and on their apps. There's just no excuse for that. But the other thing,
it also points to sort of programming ethics in a way, right? It's if you're going to build an AI like this and put it out in the public, then that's maybe something you need to consider, that people will.
You think? I mean, how could they not? You just think, like, all the many ways that this went wrong, and there are myriad. It's really freaky. You have one that's really interesting about podcasts.
Yeah, this is from a Neiman Lab article by Joshua Benton, and has to do with ethics tangentially a little bit. At least NPR says so, apparently. So National Public Radio is not promoting their podcasts on air. They've released a new ethics, quote unquote, that's what we're calling it, ethics policy, addressing how to address podcasts, how to discuss podcasts on air. So when NPR is discussing their own podcast, they're not supposed to invoke any calls to action. From their own ethics policy, they say, we won't tell people to actively download a podcast or where to find them. No mentions of NPR.org, iTunes, Stitcher, or NPR One, which is their much beloved app that they have, their own app. They give good and bad examples. So good is, quote, that's Linda Holmes of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast and our blogger on the same subject, and Bob Mondello, NPR's film critic, thanks so much. And a bad example is quote, okay, everyone, you can download alt.latino from iTunes and, of course, via the NPR One app. So you can't say that. You can't tell people exactly how to get the podcast. Another thing you can't do is, so you can be informational but not promotional. When referring to podcasts and the people who host, produce, or contribute them, we will mention the name of the podcast, but not in a way that explicitly endorses it. And then, of course, another prohibition. They're absolutely prohibited from mentioning NPR One. So for now, NPR will not be promoted on air. So in other words, NPR can't promote NPR One, its beloved app, to the people who are most likely to want it, their own listeners, the most people most likely be interested in it. So why? NPR is their public radio, right? They're an entity. They're based in Washington, D.C. Not only do they, are they public radio, but they include radio distributors, PRI, American Public Radio, PRX, and over 900 NPR member stations around the United States. So these two entities, the member stations and NPR, National Public Radio, don't always have the same interests, right? Local radio stations' greatest assets are their local community involvement, specifically the towers that they own that broadcast the radio signals. NPR's greatest asset, on the other hand, is the content that they're creating, the content and the brand of NPR itself. It's delivered via radio signal, but also on websites, through mobile apps, through a podcast. So those tensions exist within this organization. Local stations pay most of NPR's, National Public Radio's, bills. So they've got to accommodate those interests as well. So NPR's future is in content, and it isn't necessarily tied to terrestrial radio. So that's the explanation, but kind of short-sighted.
Totally short-sighted. And just last week, you were in the daily numbers. You were talking about the number of people who listen to podcasts, and it was a huge number. So, go figure. I understand they have conflicts, but very short-sighted indeed. And speaking of being short-sighted, I know you hate to talk about politics, but the headline in Esquire the other day was, Ted Cruz will do anything for love, but he won't do rats. And this is from a story by Matt Miller. And he said, though it's hard to believe that a human or a rodent would go anywhere near Ted Cruz, the candidate also confirmed that he will not have sex with his opponent, Donald Trump. As Cruz said at a press conference today, let me be clear, Donald Trump may be a rat, but I have no desire to copulate with him, whatever that means. And, talk about things that you wish you could delete from the air that you wish you could take back that you said. That's got to be one of them. But, just when you think that they cannot go any lower, that happens. So I know you're not going to want to say anything about it, but I just couldn't let it go by without noting it.
Noted. One reason I'm kind of done with politics and don't really want to talk about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Is these head-to-head matchup polls. This is more a media complaint than a political complaint, but the head-to-head matchup media polls that they do between presidential candidates. MSNBC cites them all the time. Other broadcast stations cite them all the time. But this is where they pit two presidential candidates against one another in a general election while we're still in the primary season, before either of these two candidates or any of these candidates have actually faced one another in a race. The most egregious example is, it's Clinton or Sanders versus Trump, Cruz, or Kasich right now in this political season. And so they've got polls that are showing that Clinton or Sanders will crush Trump in a general election, though they've never faced one another. The problem is, especially with Sanders, he has not been challenged on most of his positions. Hillary Clinton is not challenging him as a primary candidate. The media is not asking him challenging questions about how he's going to pay for all his programs and foreign policy in particular. He's not really challenged on that, which he doesn't really have any interest in talking about. You think Trump's going to let him get away with that in the general election? So there's not, these aren't the same people. These aren't the same candidates that are going to face each other in the general election. Those media polls are absolutely meaningless, yet they cite them as gospel.
They cite them and they create them over and over, and there are whole firms devoted to doing just that. And then there are people who I don't know, believe them. You know, I mean, I think that's really quite incredible. But speaking of media, Bank of America had a pretty big media relations fail on Twitter this week. This is Alice Marshall from Presto Vivace pointed this out, that Josh Gerstein tweeted that the Bank of America budget tool urges Americans to stop buying newspapers. Really? What a smart move. I mean, how completely ridiculous is that? And, you know, why should Bank of America have anything to say about what we read or buy? Or, I mean, it's just
Why
scary.
are they saying? Why are they saying we shouldn't buy newspapers?
Because I guess we can read them online. You know?
Well, you know, I have stopped subscribing to paper newspapers long ago because they just pile up and get my fingers full of ink. So, oh,
You know, there's one I get two Sunday papers. I get the Times and I get the Daily News. And the reason I get the Daily News is because it has TV listings. Nobody else has those. And I get the New York Times because I just love the New York Times. On the weekend, I read it online the rest of the time, but on the weekend I want my paper.
yeah, I subscribe to my local newspaper's website and stuff, and I read it. I pay for it, but
Oh, I have it online.
I don't like having to recycle my papers, and
You
I
know,
can
I
do
just have
TV.
to walk down the hall, you know, so it's not a big deal. But that brings us to best, yes?
Yes, it does.
All right, well, this is sort of controversial because I came across Esther the Wonder Pig on Facebook, and she's listed as a public figure. That was sort of funny on Facebook. And I was wondering, because they're on a cruise, it's the Esther the Wonder Pig cruise. They left yesterday, and they benefit the Happily Ever Esther Animal Sanctuary. And Esther's a pig, and she was misrepresented to her owners as a micro pig in the summer of 2012. And somehow she found her way to these two guys, and unfortunately, she was anything but a micro pig. She now weighs 670 pounds, and she lives with Steve Jenkins and Derek Walker, who figured they had to have more room, and so they decided that they're a couple, and they met at a restaurant where Derek was a waiter. I mean, Steve was a waiter, and Derek was a magician. And since Esther needed more space, they decided to do a major life change, and they bought a farm, and they opened the Happily Ever Esther Farm Sanctuary, where they could care for her and rescue other animals in need. And they now have, I mean, it's fabulous, the work that they're doing. And they have like a whole, I don't know, our pigs are herd, but they have lots of them. And Esther's the only one who lives in the house and sleeps in the bed and eats ice cream with a spoon. And they have
How does that work?
he feeds it to her with a spoon.
Okay.
They have 27,000 Twitter followers. There's an Esther store with Esther t-shirts, mugs, and jewelry. And I looked at Esther, and it's not that she's cute, it's that she's smart and loving, and her friends are all loving and kind to each other. And oh my God, do I have to rethink eating bacon? Oh no. I've always thought of bacon as a vegetable, and now I'm thinking like, ew, maybe not.
I always thought of it as candy, but
It's candy, but I mean, oh no. I wish I didn't know Esther the Wonder Pig.
Wonder Pig does whatever Wonder Pig does.
Well, they're on a cruise now.
All right. Well, I don't have a segue to that. I'm just going to say it. So Google is building a live streaming video app, of course, for YouTube. How many times have we said this in the past in past episodes of when are they going to jump on board the Periscope Meerkat train? And apparently they're going to do that. This is from a VentureBeat article by Ken Yoon. So Google has quietly been building a new live streaming app called YouTube Connect. It'll compete directly, as we said, with Periscope and Facebook Live, because Meerkat's kind of fallen off the board a little bit there. It'll be available on both iOS and Android devices. You log in using your Google account or your YouTube account, and then you can obviously begin streaming immediately from your mobile phone. They'll have chat and tagging features, a news feed that features latest clips from your friends that you've subscribed to on YouTube. Videos will be available live within the app, as well as on your YouTube site and their respective channels. So you can store your previous broadcasts in the app, meaning you can possibly have you can opt into it after it's complete, after you've completed your live stream. So it sounds like kind of like Meerkat, you could opt to save the stream to your phone and then make it possible to watch with your friends. So it looks like it's kind of a private version that they're offering. Doesn't yet have integrations with Facebook or Twitter, and a launch is expected likely in May, sometime during the Google I/O conference. So there we go, another entry into live video streaming.
Well, I have a feeling Google's going to know how to do it right. You know, what I see on Facebook is not very high quality video, and it's a one-to-many. It's not interactive. There's a long way to go with all of this, in my opinion. And I think once Google gets in there, they may finally, somebody may do it right. I hope so. I'll be there.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. We'll try it out when it comes out.
So speaking about quiet, I did not know about Wishbone, and it's an app that, this is an Ad Age story from Beth Snyder-Bullock, and teens are voting on everything from hairstyles to celebrities to brands on Wishbone. And it's very simple. It's a this or that app, and they have 4 million users in less than a year. And their core user base is the hard-to-reach base of girls aged 13 to 18. And they get very simple, satisfying content, and they create polls and they vote on their preferences. They get instant results. So examples are like Patagonia or Vineyard Vines, Monster or Rockstar energy drink. So Tiger Beat, 17, Taco Bell are using Wishbone, and the videos are 30 seconds long. They tend to run off in only about 6 seconds. And so a hair brand could feature a couple of different hairstyles around prom time, and then votes on that poll could help them determine what product or style might play best with a young female audience. And it also pushes people to the product websites. So the ad would be clickable and placed directly following the cards that were talking about the brand, the poll results. So I think that's a pretty cool thing.
That is cool. And that audience, that demographic, will have the skills, absolute skills needed for this next application I'm going to be talking about when it comes out. This is from a Recode article by Jason Del Rey, and it's Amazon has filed a patent for a process that would allow you to make purchases by selfie, by taking a photo or a video of yourself rather than using a password. It's absolutely brilliant. So it's related to a separate patent Amazon holds for technology that allows the device to authenticate a user via photo or video, but necessarily to complete a transaction. So it's kind of an extension of that patent. The scenario in the patent application is a phone or computer can prompt a user to perform certain actions like motions or gestures, winking, nodding, such as a smile or tilting your head or whatever, to prove that you are who you are rather than somebody holding up a picture of you, right? But you know, given the facial recognition technology and how far it's advanced, that would be a fantastic replacement for passwords, because God knows we need a different way to authenticate ourselves.
Oh, is that for sure? I mean, you know, I've taken to just not even trying to remember them. I just say,
just
okay,
hit forgot.
No, yeah, every time. I mean, it's quicker than trying to find the goddamn thing or remember what I said where. You know, I mean, it's just outrageous. But that, you know, that's a very interesting idea. I love that. So speaking of video, and Twitter is at long last considering paying top Vine stars who've already been making tons of money with brands for years. And YouTube shares revenue. Facebook confirmed it's going to pay some of its users to stream live. And they already share revenue with publishers. So it's about time that Twitter came along and offered to pay the people who have been paid by brands like Hyundai, MasterCard, Herbal Essence. And so MasterCard worked with Vine star Ariel Vandenberg for a multi-platform campaign. And she has 2 million followers on Vine, 500,000 on Instagram. And she promotes the content on her YouTube channel. Dr. Pepper did one-of-a-kind lip sync, and it was a very big cross-platform influencer in 2015, and they used several top Vine stars. They used Leanne V, who has 4.6 million followers, heading toward 2 billion Vine loops. Hannah Stocking has million-plus followers on Instagram, 1 million on Vine, and 130 million loops. Louis Giordano, he has 1.8 million followers and 1.4 billion loops on Vine, and they were all paid by Dr. Pepper. And, Twitter's got to come along and up the ante, too. Fair is
Wow.
fair. It's cool,
Wow.
though.
Well, I mean, a lot of these platforms should take a page from Google's playbook. Google really kind of set the method for how to
Monetize.
compensate and encourage your content creators by giving them a cut of the ad revenue. Google AdSense, and now it's applied to YouTube videos and everything. So they sort of built their platform in a smart way to encourage and reward their biggest content producers. So
Well, the other thing
the problem is that most of these new platforms don't have the ad system built when they launch the product.
Right, that's true. Or the tracking. I mean, we've talked about that before, but the other thing that Google does is they have Google Stages in big cities, and what an amazing place that is. If you have, I think it's 1,000 followers, you can come there and you can use their facility and their equipment, and they'll help you, and they have classes, and it's absolutely fantastic space. I've
So
been
it's
there
just 1,000 followers for YouTube channel. You can use it.
I'm not sure if it's 1,000, but I'm pretty sure that's all it is. And I'll have to look it up and let you know. But it's not that many. And and the space is just wonderful, and they have green screens, and they have but you get to use the latest equipment, you get to use their sound stage, their lighting, they teach classes on all of it. And you get to talk, of course, to other creators. It's just a phenomenal thing, and nobody can beat that, and they're in all the big cities.
That's very cool. I need to bump up my numbers a little bit and make a
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah, really. So do you have another one for us?
I'm done with my good stuff.
Okay, so one of the things that went viral this week was a real-life cat burglar. This woman had to close down her Facebook account because she said on Twitter, "This cat likes to humiliate me," and she had shared her now deactivated Facebook page, and she had a note on it that said, "We discovered that our cat has stolen a large amount of men's underwear. If it is yours, we are very sorry. We have them here and can return them." So that got shared like more than 500 times. And of course, that brought the media, ABC, CBC, BBC, Inside Edition, Mashable. And the family went out and they distributed street flyers and they put notes in neighbors' mailboxes. And apparently in 2 months, the cat, which was a Tonkinese cat named Bridget, it brought back 30 pairs of boxers and more than 50 socks, and her preference is patterned boxers and black socks.
Well, I was just going to ask what gender, but you just told me. So,
so somebody said on Twitter, we discussed this at breakfast and we think those might be ours. So hopefully they got together.
that's hilarious.
I love that story. That brings us to shiny new objects.
It does, yeah. Google has a nice new goodie this past week. They bought Nick Collection photo editing software several years ago, which was originally priced before they bought it at $500, competitor to Photoshop. Very sophisticated software. Google bought it primarily, I think, for the Snapseed app, which they integrated into their online photo into Google Photos. So now they bought it. They slashed the price to 150 and sold it for 150 for a while. And this week they decided, well, let's just give it away. So it's for free. It's available for Mac and Windows, and you can download it from Google at or google.com/Nick Collection. So go ahead and have
It's
it.
quite
It's pretty cool.
sophisticated.
Yep.
And kind of complex, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's a competitor to Photoshop, so it's going to be
Yeah.
Photoshop-y.
So my nephews live in Philadelphia, and I saw this Visit Philadelphia all-emoji keyboard. It's such a good idea for travel. It illustrates, they have 60 different iconic Philadelphia emojis, GIFs, and videos, and they work in text messages and emails, and they work on Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Kik, Tango, and a few others. They don't work on Twitter, Instagram, or Google Voice, but they have these emojis that illustrate the wonderful attractions, and you can share them with people. It's a wonderful idea for all sorts of travel destinations.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
very cool.
available
It's a
for
very
iOS.
smart idea.
Isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other one that I have is, as you may be hearing, I'm sick. And so I came across Sick Weather, and it's crowdsourced illness reports, and it scans social networks for letting you find out the chance of sickness when you travel. And just the same way you could check the chance of rain, and they have over 2 million people who report in each month in real time about who's sick where. And I didn't check in, I have to say, but
Airlines should have that for
oh,
flights.
should they? Yeah.
How many children are on the plane?
How many people eating onions are on your plane? How many people who brought their lunch are on your plane?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That would be good. So I believe that that happy news brings us to the daily numbers.
Daily number. So we mentioned podcasting. This is audio media consumption. Edison Research every year comes out with a survey of social media use or media use and online media use in general. And for past several years, they've focused at least part of their research on podcast consumption. So I'm going to share some of the most recent stats from that, and they illustrate the trend towards podcasting. So smartphone ownership has risen from 10% in 2009 to 76% this year. That's an estimated 207 million Americans. Then on-demand video subscription services. Netflix is at 43% of Americans, Amazon Prime 22%, and Hulu 9%. 51% have subscribed to any of the above. So just the idea that people are subscribing to streaming multimedia on-demand content is another trend that points towards a bright future for podcasting. Online radio listening in car, from 6% in 2010 to 37% this year. So people who listen to online radio while they're in their car. The device used most often to listen to podcasts in 2015. The computer was 42%, and a smartphone, tablet, or portable device was 55% this year. Computer is 34%, and mobile devices 64%. So it's getting more portable. People are listening to it on the device they're carrying with them. Radio ownership is dropping. This is fascinating stats. So in 2008, the number of people who said they had zero radios in the home was 4%. In 2016, that had grown to 21%. So people are getting rid of their actual, radios that they listen to AM, FM on, because they've got other devices to listen to the radio on. Podcasting consumption is growing. So in 2006, podcast listening was at 11%. This year it's at 36%. That's an estimated audience of 98 million. And then monthly podcast listening, in 2008 it was 9%. 2016 it's 21%. That's an estimated 57 million Americans. Weekly podcast listening in 2013 it was 7%. In 2016 it's up to 13%. That's an estimated 35 million podcast listeners who listen weekly. So people are starting to build a habit of of listening to podcasting as well. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast for yourself or for your company, probably the time is now before it hits mainstream, so you can get your feet underneath you and learn the ropes and take
Build
your
an
lumps, make your
audience.
mistakes, and build an audience.
Well, I think that bodes well for advertising on podcasts, and I wonder when, sponsorship is going to become more common on
Well,
podcasts.
that's the problem with podcasts is we
Yeah.
don't have the analytics to help advertisers understand the audiences that podcasters have. There's no Google Analytics for podcasting.
God, what
So,
an opportunity for startups.
well, I wonder if that's going to change once Google opens up podcasts to Play stores, like they
Right.
say they're going to. So,
A year or so ago. Yeah, well, it's Google. They don't do things in logical order. But, look how long it took them to come to live streaming. So it remains to be seen. I'm sure they'll get there. And, in their own time and in their own way. So that brings us to the end of episode 136 of the Beyond Social Media Show. And links to everything we talked about will be on our blog, beyondsocialmediashow.com/136. And we'd love you to leave us a review at beyondsocialmediashow.com/love, hoping that you loved it. And you'll find David he's at D Erickson on Twitter. He's at estrategyblog.com and creativepr.com/blog, both of which are really excellent blogs. You should definitely be reading them. I am B.L. Ochman. I am at What's Next, and my blog is what'snextblog.com. The CEO of maximum-plus.com for all things live streaming and video services. And the show is beyondsocialmediashow.com. On Twitter, we are at BS Media Show, and we have a newsletter, beyondsocialmediashow.com/newsletter, and it has content that we don't have time to cover on the show and that we just think is awesome and that you should know about. And when you subscribe to the to the newsletter, tell them what they get, Dave.
You get the big book of cool stuff, compiled all the cool new shiny new objects we come up with every week. The best of the best are compiled into one easy to reference ebook.
And the only way you get it is by subscribing to our newsletter. So thanks for watching episode 136. We'll be back next week, same time, same station.
Thanks for
Happy
watching.
Easter.